No sunlight, no grass, just a bunch of fluorescent lights in a seemingly endless complex of yellow walls and carpets, with its only escape being through extreme industrialization. Will I survive or be stuck in these rooms forever? This is Liminal Industries. So now, what is Liminal Industries exactly? To put it simply, you spawn in the backrooms, scavenge for resources, reshape the backrooms into your own industrial mega factory to eventually find or craft 12 magical eyes to escape. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong! Liminal Industries is one of the most grindiest technical packs I've ever seen and played. What stands between you and escaping is tons upon tons of machines, automation, and of course, terrifying mobs. So without wasting any more time, this is my adventure through Liminal Industries. It's weird. Anyways, yeah, this is us. Here's our quest book. And basically, what we gotta do first is, it says right here, we gotta break furniture and get wood. Yeah. But so luckily we spawned right next to some tables and chairs, you know. Let's make our crafting table. And for that we get a confetti popper. Ooh. Okay. Anyways, we have a lot of stuff to do. So first, the game wants us to stay safe. Some parts of these rooms seem to be infected with skulk. It's probably best to stay far away from the stuff as possible. Barricading corridors to infected rooms, yeah, I don't care. I probably should though, but for now I don't. We also get an eccentric tome, so it's a lot of reading that I don't want to do. And we got a tiny potato. This guy is probably the best item in the game. Yes! Look at that. Awesome. So let's take him back and let's continue. I guess this is just for taking photos, so it's not as important, but it's good to have so we can document our progress. So now I guess now we have to... Yeah, I see skulk there already. Okay, let's not go that direction. Oh my god, there's so much wood here. Actually, let's make an axe. You also need to craft a cutting board and the knife. Once I finished crafting both the knife and the cutting board, it was finally time to start reshaping the backrooms. With our first main quest being vandalism, this requires us to use the knife to cut up some carpet and use our pickaxe on the exposed tiles to acquire concrete. Wait, so right here, this should give us some concrete. Sorry if you hear my mouse, but we're gonna go ham on this. So what can we do with concrete? We can make a furnace. Okay. Bang, there's our furnace. The next thing on our list was collecting water, and this needs a dry sponge, which we can make using this recipe. And to get the string, we need to use our chopping board and cut up some carpet. While I was doing this, I also found out that the string was not 100% guarantee. So yeah, I needed to grab some more carpet in the process. Now we can make a sponge. Oh wait, speaking of soggy water, here we go. We got nice. So that's good. Once I finished that quest, I started exploring the back rooms and found this room that had a lot of fluid pipes and containers, as well as a room with a lot of cardboard, which when broken actually dropped string. So I took everything that I could get my hands on. I also went ahead and got a few more quests out of the way. One of them involved me using a brush to use on carpet to get dust, but this also had a chance to summon silverfish. And the other quest involved me making an item called the sack, which is basically just an early game backpack with 9 slots. And once I got all of that out of the way, it was finally time to find a place for us to settle. Look at this place. There's a trampoline. It's huge. But hold on, let's check it out. You know, let's not be too trusting. But yeah, let's check it out. Oh, it's near skulk area though. I should probably block that off, huh? Oh. Oh. Oh no. Please. Oh. Now that we finally had a place to stay, I really wanted to get back to rushing the quest book because food was really becoming a problem. Even to the point where I tried eating soap. Soap. Okay, don't do that. Oh my gosh. Half my health. Yeah, that seems fair. Thank you, game. Don't eat soap, it's dangerous for you. After I finished choking on soap, the next thing on our list was to actually start a farm. And to do this, basically the game wants us to wash the dust we just gathered from the carpet using the fan we just made. Doing this gives us a chance to obtain some berry seeds. which will basically be our early game food source. We also have a small chance to obtain clay, which will be important later. And during this process, since using the hand crank takes a lot of hunger, I actually end up dying, but thankfully I made a bed beforehand. Anyways, after that, I went ahead to the upstairs area of our little base and started a little farm there. After that, I went ahead and made some clay buckets, which I then later smelted to become ceramic buckets. And then I crafted a bucket of water using our wet sponge. After that, I went ahead and collected all the materials I needed to make our first multi-block, which was the alloy kiln furnace. This will help us create lava. And once I was finished setting it up, I just needed to smack it in the middle with the engineering hammer and boom, alloy kiln furnace completed. Now we can finally make lava and finish this chapter off with making a cobblestone generator. But before that, to actually make lava using this furnace, we first need either 5 cobblestone or a stack of concrete. And since we don't have any cobblestone... Anyways, after what felt like 17 years, I finally got enough concrete to make our first lava bucket, to which I immediately put to good use by making a very scuffed looking cobblestone generator. And the only reason it looks like this for now is because I don't have any blocks that don't burn in lava yet. More importantly, we're finally done chapter 1. Only 4 more to go. Yay. Now we in the Stone Age. We're actually done chapter 1. That wasn't that bad. We get a turtle plushie. You can put that here. Alright, chapter 2. Oh, no, we go to the Nether in chapter 2. Looks like we also do some with Botania, which is another mod I'm not very familiar with. But looks like we actually get to do some create stuff here. As you can see, we actually entered the Steam Age. Yep. So the way this mod pack works is it actually locks early sources of like rotational power, like water wheels. It locks water wheels behind steel, which you don't get until much later on, basically. And what it does instead is it lets you enter the Steam Age a lot quicker. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing. So the first thing chapter 2 wants us to do is to collect ash. This is important because it's used for making the andesite alloy equivalent of this pack, which is ash alloy. But first, we need to break down some cobblestone into gravel to then get 2 pieces of flint to make a flint, and light items on fire such as cardboard to get ash. Let the world burn. Let the world burn free. Sorry. Anyways, now that we have ash, all we need to do is put that together with cobblestone in the alloy kiln furnace, and we can make our very first few ash alloy. And the first component the game wants us to make is a mechanical press, which is done by smacking an andesite casing with an ash alloy block. The next thing I wanted to do was get started on Botania, which is like the right side of chapter 2. And the first thing I wanted us to do was to make a petal apothecary. So just to be safe, I made 3. We can then use this petal apothecary to make floral fertilizer, as well as flux tooth spores. So first we make the floral fertilizer by throwing in 2 dyes of any color, as well as ash, and then finishing it with a seed. And here is the floral fertilizer in action, giving us some nice flowers. And we actually end up using the white flowers that we got from it to make some pure daisies using this recipe. After that, I went ahead and explored the backrooms a little bit to hopefully get some more components for the steam engine, because there are a lot of copper stuff just lying around. Until I had all the materials I needed and it was finally time to build the steam engine. And for the design I chose, I just used the picture that the quest book showed us, yep. So original. With the steam engine completed, the next thing on our list was flux tooth spores, which is basically our way of making redstone. To complete this quest, we need to use the petal apothecary again and input this recipe in it. Bang, bang, bang. There we go. After completing that little side quest, the next important thing to do was to make another multi-block, which was a coke furnace. And to do that, we need 27 coke bricks. And to make 4 coke bricks, we need to do this recipe. And since I had a pretty good supply of ash alloy and cobblestone, all I needed was to smelt some ash, make the bricks, place down the big furnace, and slap it with a hammer. And with this furnace, we can input items such as furniture to actually make coal blocks, while having a byproduct of creosote oil, which will be important later. And to test out our new furnace, I went ahead and explored the backrooms a little bit more to gather some more furniture. And during this little adventure, I found a lot of wooden chairs, wooden furniture, a lot of appliances, as well as some fluid tanks and fluid pipes. And after that, I went ahead and put all the furniture I got into the furnace, and as you can see, we were making some coal blocks, as well as some creosote oil, which we can then use to make treated wooden planks. We can then take the white daisies that we made earlier, put them down like this, and then surround them with the treated wood we just made to make some living wood. And once we have some living wood, we can make some deployer hands to then eventually make some deployers. After that, I went ahead and made some crushing wheels, as well as some belts using carpet. After that, I went ahead and used the petal apothecary to make some sugarcane. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, wait. Bang. But before we can plant it, we need sand, and to get sand, we actually need to use our crushing wheels. And with the very little resources I had, I made a little system to make our crushing wheels actually work, powered up the steam engine, and went ahead and made some sand. I also went ahead and pressed down the sand to make an item called snad. And the nice thing about this item is that anything planted on it will actually grow super fast if the block is constantly getting a redstone pulse. And now that we have access to sugar, we can make one of our main sources of food, which is liminal jam in the cooking pot. With the liminal jam cooking in the background, I also went ahead and got started on making the 10 lava buckets I needed to get to the nether. And 10 lava buckets later, we're now able to go to the nether. Some pretty simple stuff. What the hell? W nether. It looks nicer with shaders too. Wow. So after I finished getting a stack of the nether floor, I went ahead and started searching for the main reason we went here, which is the evil eye, located at the peaks of the bookshelf stacks. This is one of the eyes that we will use for our escape. Oh, that's actually it. What the hell? Nice. Lost eye. W. After finishing our nether expedition, I went ahead and threw some quartz blocks into the crushing wheels to make quartz, played some chess, realized I was terrible at chess, so I went ahead and chopped up some books for some leather, to eventually make a backpack. With those last few quests completed, the final thing for us to do to complete chapter 2 is to make a smeltery. So here in the background, you'll see me gathering the resources that we need to make grout. Because much like the Create Above and Beyond video, we'll be making the smeltery using seared bricks. And the way to obtain seared bricks is by smelting grout. Now that we have 2 stacks of grout smelting in the background, we can switch our focus towards making another important item, which is the electronic component. This will be useful in many recipes to come. Most importantly, it's an item we need to finish our smeltery, and to make it we need a treated slab, a copper wire, and quartz all placed into a sequence recipe. And to make some copper wires, which is the only item we're missing, all we need to do is place some copper sheets into a rolling mill. And one sequence recipe later, we're able to make some electronic components. And without wasting any more time, I went ahead and grabbed all the smelted seared bricks we had to make a casting table, a fuel tank, some faucets, and a drain before running out of copper. But before I went ahead and explored for some, I went ahead and built as much of the smeltery as I can. But once that was complete, it was finally time to go explore. I'm just gonna let the next few clips play on their own though, so I'll see you all soon. Oh, that's not good. Okay, yeah, I hate this game. Okay, there's my stuff. Nice. Okay. The backrooms is taking me. Hello. Can I make these into something? No. Where did Ashel 8070 come from, man? Oh, okay, I hate my life. You know what? Can I? Oh my god. Oh no. Well, I'm dead. Oh no. Swim! Okay. Oh, I'm so dead. Anyone know where my body is, bro? Oh wait, oh my god, so they're right here. I knew it. Oh, well. Anyways, after losing my mind during that entire exploration segment, I finally had enough items to complete the smeltery. There we go. Now that we have a finished smeltery, this basically marks the end of chapter 2. But unfortunately, we have no time to celebrate, as chapter 3 is very, 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 very long. But we're not gonna let that stop us, so we're gonna move on to chapter 3. So the first thing I did before starting chapter 3 was actually tidy up the place off camera. And by tidying I mean change all the crafting tables to crafting stations, because they can access, you know, like side by side storages and other stations, as well as basically rebuild the entire factory area. So right now it looks a lot neater than it used to be. And if you've noticed my pure stone tools, I also spent some time playing around with the Tinker's mod, because I'm pretty sure that these are better than just my regular tools. But without wasting any more time, the first thing we have to do in chapter 3 is to melt furniture, and we can do that by using our smeltery that we made in chapter 2. And by doing this, we can actually get ingots such as iron, gold, silver, lead, and all that good stuff. And by placing any item that has the shape of an ingot like a brick in our casting table, we're able to make an ingot cast using our molten gold. This will be our bread and butter for making ingots. I also added some automation to it, as you can see here. Okay, now that we have iron though, we can make an iron bucket. There you go. Now we can get infinite lava. After that, the next thing I wanted to do was to make this light engineering block using this sequence recipe. But for now, all I made was the light engineering frame. This is because I actually want to get started on another section of chapter 3, which involved a lot of botania, which is a mod I've never used, by the way. But the quest book here tells us to make a mana pool, which needs living rock. And the way we make living rock is by using our white daisies and putting stone around them. We also need to make this item called the mana spreader, and with the materials I had, I was able to make 2. Once that was done, the last thing we needed to make was an endoflame flower, which means back to the petal apothecary. And with the materials I had at the time, I was able to make 4 endoflames. Once I gathered all the materials I needed, I created a little mana pool area as instructed by the Botania book. I then went ahead and crafted a one of the forests to be able to bind the mana spreaders to the mana pool. After that, all I needed to do was sacrifice some coal to the endoflames, and I was making mana. With the mana pool out of the way, the next thing on our list was to make a brazier, which needed pewter ingots shown by this recipe in the alloy kiln. And once they were done smelting, I was able to make the brazier, as well as the 4 hands it needed. With that quest completed, the next thing we needed to make was a runic altar, which needed a mana steel ingot. And to make one of them, we need to throw an iron ingot into our mana pool. After making the runic altar, the next thing I wanted to do was summon a cod. And to do this, I need 2 soul shards, a bowl of water, a bone meal, and a piece of charcoal. But the way to obtain soul shards is by doing a soul crystallization ritual near undead mobs. Luckily for us, we're pretty close to a husk spawner. And basically the way we do the ritual is by having the brazier on 2 hands, placing redstone on both the hands and the bone meal on the brazier, and then lighting the bone meal on fire and letting magic do its thing. And while gathering the materials I needed to summon a cod, I also found out that you can't just carry a bowl of water around. But once everything was in place, it was time to summon a cod. Bang. First time summoning a cod. The quest wants us to kill this, right? Yeah, we need raw cod. Bang. Well, that just spawn killed the cod. Feels bad, man. Now we need to make a crucible, which needs a rune of water. Rune of water, how do we make that? Mana steel, mana powder. Boom. Rune of water, baby. And boom. And I think we need to put this over... I'm pretty sure we need to put this over a campfire as well. But that can just stay there for now. After making the crucible, the next thing on our list was to throw bricks at the lights to get fluorescent tubes. Bang. Bang. You can get a bunch of these. Oh, I missed. I also spent some time repairing the back rooms. I don't know why. But after that, I was pretty much ready to make the light engineering blocks, so I went ahead and made a little contraption to make sequence crafting a little easier. But before I make the light engineering blocks, let's see just how safe my factory is. Okay, quickly. Oh no! Oh no! Yo, I didn't even mean to do that. I swear I didn't even mean to do that. What? Anyways, I was able to make 4 light engineering blocks, to which I then used one to make an item called an igneous extruder by slapping it with a drill head. And to use our igneous extruder, it has to be beside lava and another component, and that other component is what decides what the igneous extruder makes. For example, if you have water and lava adjacent to a igneous extruder, it'll automate cobblestone. So I made a little contraption that basically stores cobblestone for me. Nice. I also made this cobblestone in a bucket, just for completion's sake. Apparently smelting it will give me lava, so that's nice to know. I also ended up making another igneous extruder, but this time it's beside stripped wallpaper, and instead of cobblestone, this produces glue. And once we smelt it, we can make cured glue, and now we're one step away from getting automated wood. But before we can even get our hands on this bamboo, we first need to make a rune of earth. But before we can make a rune of earth, we need to make a mushroom. And to make a mushroom, we need to go back to the petal apothecary, like blah blah blah, you already know the drill. Lucky for you, all you have to see is me making the mushroom, and then me making the rune of earth. Yay! And with that, we're able to make our first bamboo. And since I'm able to plant this on SNAD, I grew a lot. I mean a lot. Since I knew we were pretty close to automating fuel, I went ahead and tear down my factory because I wanted to make it in a way to where I can actually funnel fuel into my steam engine. And during that, I also went ahead and made some tool casts because I wanted to make a better axe and a better pickaxe, with the material I chose being silver because I had the most of it. But after a lot of tossing and turning, I couldn't really fully decide on what I wanted to do. So I just left it as a work in progress for now and moved on to the next quest, which was making a skulk scrubber. So first we make the nullifier, then follow a stupidly tedious crafting tree to make a redstone flux coil, and then finding out we have no aluminum, so I went ahead and melted some trampolines in my smelter. But eventually we persevere and make our redstone flux coil, and then our scrubber. Now we can bring this item to any skulk infested area and clean it up if we so please. After some time off camera, I also made myself a smart storage so that I have one place where I can store pretty much every item I own. I also went ahead and set up my crucible properly, so on top of a campfire, and followed this recipe to make sulfur. A thing about crucible is that you have to copy the recipes exactly how it's written. Thankfully, the recipe for sulfur is quite simple. So after smelting some bones for some enchanted ash, I threw it in with some charcoal in the crucible and got a sulfur, which I immediately used to craft a time in a bottle. And this is the best item in the game, I'll explain later. Once that was done, the next thing to do was to make a soulfire wand, but making this tool requires its own workbench called the magic workbench. And to make the magic workbench, we need polished wooden planks, which means we need to use the crucible again, and this time it needs a much more complex recipe compared to sulfur. But you know, I'm already a pro of using the crucible, so it's no problem. And once the polished wood was complete, all I had to do was make a pewter inlay, and then I can make the magic workbench. I also had to use the crucible again to make an item called arcane gold, but much like the polished wood, it was really no problem, so I did this a couple times, until I had 2 ingots and an inlay. After that, it's back to the crucible to make a lesser soul gem, until we had all the materials we needed to make the soulfire wand. And after that, I used the soulfire wand to blast some bricks into nether bricks. I also made some empty fuses and blasted it with the soulfire wand to make a soul fuse. But now it's time to work on the blast furnace, which is another multi-block which needs concrete. And since the making of concrete would need our factory to work, it's time to make an automatic fuel source for our steam engine. So I started by making an automatic, super fast bamboo farm, as well as an aqueous accumulator, some fluid ducts, and some servos. You'll see why in a bit. And the reason why I made those items is to actually use for the steam engine, because pairing these items together actually make it so that we don't need rotational power to pump water into our steam engine. And I had some extra pipes and servos left over, so I made a little fluid tank for the creosote oil that our furnace was producing. And after that, I actually made the system to automate fuel into our steam engine by starting off with the bamboo farm, which funnels its bamboo into a basin and a press, which presses it into the bamboo blocks. The bamboo blocks then get cooked into charcoal, which then gets deposited into our furnace to make coke coal, which then becomes our steam engine fuel. And surprisingly enough, this works. Now we have an automatic 50,000 stress units because I upgraded the steam engine a little bit. And with the factory done, I began working on making the concrete that we needed to make the blast furnace. And once the concrete was done, I had enough items to make the blast furnace. And the blast furnace allows us to make a bunch of items, but most importantly, steel ingots. And since each ingot takes a minute in there, I just decided to put a bunch of iron and left it there to cook. In the meantime, I moved on to making an alternator, as well as some flux ducts, which is basically how we can transport power using the alternator. After that, I moved on to make some kegs and some heating casks, and began making a system to where I can take one out and then re-input another one back into the system. Basically, in this mod pack, we use kegs to automate items like redstone, glowstone, and slime. Since each keg is able to output 2 at a time, we can take one out to keep for ourselves, and then use another one to re-input back into the system. And you know, after getting some of my gears turning, I eventually came up with a design that works. And now all that's left for us to do is to try it out. You'll also get to see why the time in the bottle is the best item in the game. For context, each recipe in the keg takes more than a minute to make. I've been holding my time in a bottle. Okay, so if I put this here, and then you can times 8 it, so it goes faster. What should happen is, bruh, Okay, so it's gonna boom, split, go up. Oh wait, no, I have not filtered it. Okay, so this will be for flux 2 spores. Wait, that works though. Yeah. With the core design working, all I had to do was input in a glimmercap spore for glowstone, as well as a slytech spore for slime. After that, our hot steel was finally done smelting, so I made an area for it to be sprayed with water. I then threw a steel rod into a rolling mill to make a crowbar. And to top it all off, I also found a better way to make ash alloy through a basic burner and a mixing basin. And so after everything we've built, all the hardships we've faced, it looks as if we're finally starting to get somewhere, and more importantly, get closer to escaping. Though there's still a lot left to do before we're able to achieve that goal, I do hope that you enjoyed this journey with me, and I hope to see you all in our next adventure. Bye bye for now.